What's all this? This is a Dominions 5? No, it's Gary Grigsby's War in the East 2. And I'm going to try to do a little bit of a playthrough of this game here. As you can see, the AI, Axis AI, is moving. We're the good guys, the Soviets. We've set the Axis to AI. Our settings, I might take a screenshot of. We're on hard, fog of war is off, and there's some other stuff that doesn't matter. Look, I'm not a mechanical expert in all the intricacies of War in the East. I can't tell you like the super fine details, so this is going to be a little bit more casual, less detailed than maybe some of the Dominions content, but I think it might be fun. And we'll check back in when this computerized stuff is done messing around and we can actually see what remains of our frontage. Last note on that AI thing is that hard AI means that all their stuff is at 125%, and a lot of our things like admin points or whatever are going to be at 80% of total. So it's a pretty big swing, but I think that the Axis has it tougher in this game because the Soviets actually won in history, and the AI can be a little derpy, even though it does have certain advantages. They're nonsense. Woof. We've lost 250,000 men on the first turn, which is not unexpected, being what it's Operation Barbarossa. The turn summary here. Get our little blurb giving us the history, and some shortages of forces in other theaters that I am going to ignore because I assume that it's just the difficulty that's making those a superior short there, and I want my troops to be on the main front anyway. Unfortunately, the air phase has to be completed before the ground phase, so we get this boring little thing we gotta do. I'm gonna mostly automate this. If you're good at the game, you can do this manually, but I'm not going to. I'm gonna set most of my guys who are in harm's way to retreat to get them as many of their planes out of there as I can, and I will leave troops in the back, like the Baltic or the Leningrad Air Command, Moscow Air Command, etc., on flexible. Southwestern Air Command, yeah, you better retreat too. I'm going to set Southern to hold for now. It's not going to be overrun right away, but maybe you're in an ignorant spot. Alright, executing the air. Onto the real war now. Air nonsense is over with. So now we can see a little more in depth what happened to us. A bunch of our units just surrendered. These flags mark places where I think surrenders are routes with the tanks marking other less gross victories. So we have the general task of the Soviets in this game is to balance between evacuating units, getting out units so that you can use them later in the war, and not giving too much ground to the Germans. So to that end, we're going to be retreating quite a lot in the early turns, but our general strategic goal is to establish strong positions centered around a line that goes from Pskov in the north along this little river to Smolensk in the center, and then in the south to Kiev, wherever that is. Yeah, over here. So those are a ways ahead of the German advance right now, but they will get there shortly. We may not hold all of those, but I think concentrating on those can really give them what for, basically. Like, even if they don't take them, I think that's a good place to put your foot down and stop retreating. This entire thing is so huge. We're going to go through it section by section, and the first thing we're going to do is go through the pockets, because they're easy. Because what we want to do with our forces in the pockets is just to get them out Or occasionally we'll leave somebody on a critical hex that might have one of these rail lines going through it to defend it and try to disrupt their supply, or moving a unit onto a German rail hex. I am not going to be doing the disband trick that you can do. I'm going to be trying to move as many dudes out just by movement as possible. We'll start with this northern pocket, and part of it is going to be just going to try to move back towards our forces. That might be a fruitless endeavor. Whereas the stuff in the north, they have kind of left gaps in their lines, so we're going to try to get some of these ports that you can't see because the battle's are over them. The UI. And try to get them out navally. Here we are. So yeah, the northern pocket, I just pulled people out. I also did a little bit of command structure rejiggering so that the units in the pocket would be commanded by other things in the same pocket. These guys down here, they're just in a hopeless position. Like, they cannot... they just cannot move to anywhere, so they're just going to stay in their fortifications and hope to delay the Germans as long as possible. We'll get these guys out by sea, hopefully. We'll try to get these guys out by land, but it's not looking great for them. Here's the central pocket, which is trapped in Belarus, which might as well be the name of a horror movie. And we're going to do a similar thing, evacuate who we can, but some of these guys on the fortified lines are going to have to stay as rear guards. Sorry, boys. Dealt with this middle pocket and discovered something horrible. The Western Front HQ and Western Air Command are both trapped in the pocket. So what we've done over here, we have a number of pretty decently shaped mobile units. They've linked up with the command structure and are trying to make it out. We've broken the pocket in one place, but I'm not going to do any disband cheese. Whereas the entire Third Army, and we've put all these rifle corps that are holding the remains of the fortifications with them, are going to be our stay behind forces. So it's fairly extreme, but I don't think these guys are getting out, and they'll stand a better chance of doing something for us, defending these fortified positions, than running away behind the armor. The armor probably won't get out, but we kind of have to try. There's too many like good shaped units in here to let them all just die in place. And then we're going to move on to this southern, I think this is the Southwestern front. Yeah, it has a couple of these little tiny pockets. I'm not going to bother with them. They're completely screwed. They can't go anywhere. But this sort of pseudo pocket here, we're going to evacuate, as well as we're going to try to get at least our tanks out of this, and probably the infantry too, out of this pseudo pocket here. These units, although they are fairly strong, they are probably screwed. We might, hell, they're gonna have to stay in the trenches. So that's gonna be our first order of evacuation for the Southwestern front, and then I think we're going to do the rest of the Southwestern front. We're actually going to try to put up a little bit of a fight here. We're going to try to keep this corridor open so that this pseudo pocket gets evacuated. Like I said, we're not going to disband cheese. We will be railing people, though, out of here. Okay, get your mind out of the gutter. We won't be railing people in that way. We're just going to be railing them out of this pocket down here if we can. Let's see if they let me do that. No. Alright, so we can rail some of the people out of the pocket, but it looks like with the worst cases, we are going to have to walk them, and then we might be able to. Alright, so that's about the shape of the Southwestern front. Well, I guess you don't see that. I just completed the shape of the Southwestern front. As you can see, we've evacuated most of the forming pocket, though these are high quality. This mountain division is mountain divisions are high quality divisions I want to get out, as is this armored division. We'll see if we can. Some of these guys are just doomed and holding position. We've formed this little river line around the, whatever this called, it's called the Severets, I think, river over here, between Tarnopol and Chirkov, whatever. You get back there. Point is, we've got a decent defensive line. We're going to make a stand, and we've laid a nasty little, what I hope is a nasty little surprise for the Germans. These tank units that are on reserve drive forward and participate in battles that are on the front line. So hopefully, what I'm hoping is that, given that the Germans are still pushing ahead with their armor and their infantry has to clean up back here, we should be able to hold them a turn longer and get some of these further back defensive lines established. Up here in the north, it's a bit messier, but the terrain is bad. We're using right now basically the Pripyat swamps as flank protection. All these Western Front guys are just going to run away, but which will eventually run out and come to bite us. We got this paratrooper corps forming our swamp brigade right now, but for now, leaving this flank open lets us deploy more forces onto this front and stop these tanks from breaking out into this just beautifully open plains area. Alright, let's go on to the southern front. They didn't advance here because Romania doesn't join the war until the second turn, so what we're going to do in the south is we're going to go back to the Dniester River, and we're going to, well, really we're going to defend some of these creeks and woods in this area. But the Dniester River is going to be the first main line we're going to defend. They're going to break through that, of course. This is, I will just be realistic about that. But, and we will lose Odessa, as sad as that is. But we're going to try to make some delaying actions in this, just a few in Bessarabia, mostly give it up, then make the main fight in Transnistria. The ideal situation is defending along the Dniester, where we have the strong river boundary. Then when we get pushed back, defending each of these creeks in turn, and then the final defense on this southern end being the Yuzhny Bug, where it turns into a major river around Nikolaev. We don't want to be in a situation where we have to defend along the Dnieper and Kherson, but if we have to, then we have to. So the goal here is to stop the Germans from even getting into really the Donbass, or hell, even the Donetsk basin, and keeping them from getting into Crimea. So that's the southern front sorted. We have a few of these little crossings that we're going to still defend with security detachments just as a speed bump. But otherwise, we're also going to defend Kinshev. This could get a fairly powerful armored unit pocketed. Hopefully it doesn't, but I think that putting this guy in this city here will give us a little bit better of a chance delaying this turn, so that they don't get on the border of the river this turn. They have to move up to the river and then launch like unprepared attacks over it, which would be bad for them. Yeah. Move this guy. Move this guy here. Why not? This is a little bit of a gap, so hopefully they don't exploit it too badly. This is a little flaw in our plan, where the Dniester just splits off into these two creeks instead of staying this one big river. I call them creeks, but these are honestly like fairly decent rivers compared to what we have in Ohio, and then the Dnieper and the major rivers, just mega large, sort of Mississippi type of rivers. So I'm going to continue moving north and try to do something with the Western Front, which has been blown wide open. And while it wasn't really going to touch the reinforcements at this phase, the Western Front is in such bad shape that I think most of these white units, which are newly arrived STAVKA units, are just going to be shoved into the gap and assigned to the Western Front. On these fronts, I did not do a whole lot of command rejiggering. In most places, the commands are fairly intact, and in other places, I don't really want to mess with them until you the front gets a little more stabilized. But I will be doing that. But yeah, the Western Front down here in the Pripyat, I'm just going to concentrate on getting people out. In this section, I'm going to try my best near Minsk. I can't retake it, but I'm going to try to keep this area defended enough to let people out of the pocket. It's probably just going to get a bunch of divisions beat up, but the end goal for this stuff up here is we're going to try to delay the Germans in this area of rough terrain enough so that we can get a strong defensive line along the Dnieper, which is another large river. And if you ask me why the rivers are so important, well, I don't know the in-depth mechanics of this game. It definitely models river crossings as something that is hard for the attacker to deal with. And so being behind a river line in rough terrain is going to generally be a good thing. But then come winter, most of the rivers will start freezing, and we'll be able to then attack over them no problem. Get defensive lines at the major rivers, in this case the Dnieper. We're really going to try to keep Chernigov and this area, which is the very end of the Pripyat marshes, with lots of major rivers and defensive terrain and obstacles. We're really going to try to keep the Germans from pushing through this area, and because if they get through that, all this is great defensive terrain, but if they get through it, then they kind of get into all this just open terrain around Kursk and stuff, and that's not like our next good line of defense. The historical one around Voronezh region, and that's, in case no one ever told you, tanks and swamps don't mix, so we've got these depleted, wrecked tank units we're trying to get out, and that's through this swampy ass terrain, and that's no good. Maybe I could rail them. Maybe I'll try next turn. So what a fucking mess this is. We've done our best opening this pocket and pushing forces into the gap, but as you can see, we've just got these new forces from a hodgepodge of different places, and I'm not going to try to fix the Western Front's command structure until I figure out if it can actually get out or not. Might as well put it here. When these guys rout, it might actually retreat out of the pocket. But we'll see. I've got a very thin, ragged line here. Fortunately, the follow-up infantry are very far behind the German main army. But got a thin, ragged line here just to try to put something in between the Germans and where we really want our line to be. I'm leaving these two reinforcement divisions on Smolensk so they start fortifying it, because Smolensk is really a great defensive point, and it's right down the railroad from Moscow, so we really, really do want to have this Dnieper Smolensk sort of defensive line if we can put it together. We may not be able to, but god damn it, we're going to try. Northwestern Front, likewise, is a mess. We do have some new units coming in. We may organize these a little better, but for the Northwestern and Leningrad fronts, we're going to try to defend in this area south of Velkhy Luki, near Poltavsk. There's a strong river border here, and while this river border is not really defensible, given what they've come up with, making them push us off it means that we will be able to take up defensive positions in this excellent rough terrain here, and we really want to make it so that the Germans have to push into this rough terrain, and we can make a good defensive line here and stop people from being outflanked. Remember, they're getting near it, but I said that I did want to defend this Pskov line here and try to stop them from even getting to Leningrad up there. So when I get to the Leningrad front, right after the Northwestern front, they're kind of part and parcel of a package. The Leningrad front is going to be establishing a line of defense along the Narva and along the whatever this is called, Velikaya, yeah, whatever. This the river around Pskov. Again, it's not because this is like a super defensible line here, but it's because if we defend this line and get pushed off of it, we get pushed into this great terrain. So we just don't want to give them any of this for free. Well, except for Estonia, they can have that for free. Oh, and another super spooky thing: the Northwestern front is just two paces ahead of the German armor. Let's get that out of there. So we've got our ragged line put together. Now I could fix the command structure here. This is more laziness than it is an actual good decision, but I'm going to wait one more turn just to see how things turn out. We do have our defensive blob at Velhi Luki or south of Velhi Luki, and we'll see how that works out. There's not a lot of enemies here. There's some really strong armor, and all these little regiments consolidate. One of the ways the AI gets to cheat is that it gets to freely consolidate regiments into larger units and split them up basically in the same turn, which you can't do. It costs you a lot of admin points, I think, if that's current. But point is, these being regiments to split up and loot is not going to stop them from coming together into strong units next turn and bullying us and then splitting back into regiments. But all their supporting infantry is back here, so they don't really have a lot of stuff to push us with. We're mostly evacuating Estonia. We're going to leave some of the Tallinn units there to guard the fortress, and honestly these security regiments are so small, that unit's locked, that we're just going to leave them just to make the Germans actually have to push onto these islands with forces and fight over ferry crossings and shit like that. So that's what we've got there. Now, after all the fronts basically are done, we have our sort of defensive line, and we'll see what it does next turn. But after that, there's all these little scattered units like in the back. These guys might be locked, but no, this guy's not. That are basically you just need to put them on trains to get them to the front. Like, these guys are all the way in the Caucasus. We have the Caucasus military district. It's locked, but its units aren't locked, so we're gonna just be spending a lot of time scooching these backup guys to the front, and some of these other guys, since the southern front was in better shape, we didn't have to scramble them as much as we did on more northerly fronts, so they're gonna get those guys into operation. And then after that, we have our reserves. You have this reserve. This is your strategic reserve, and then these are like your northern front. The guys we're not going to give enough troops to, basically. Like, we could expand the ground. I don't know if we can take from these guys, but we can definitely give from our strategic reserve to them as we see fit. This is our strategic reserve. The units in orange just arrived, so they can't be deployed yet. They could be disbanded, I think. And the units with the brown can be deployed. Some of these units arrive in good condition, like that guy's great infantry divisions. We'll deploy them next turn. Some of them arrive depleted, so we're just going to refit them. And you're not going to see much of that screen because it's a bunch of boring, like, clicking with not a lot of stuff happening. But it's important to know it exists, and I will be pulling stuff out of the reserve. You can also build units, but I'm not going to build units till the frontline units I have a reasonable amount of shit. Now, that might not be optimal play. There might be units I could build that would be better than refitting my beat-ass early war divisions, but I think we're going to play this a little bit realistically. Oh yeah, and here's the choo-choo trains. That's that turn done. The only thing left to do is depots, and we're going to let the computer do that. And then we'll ship the turn off, and it'll be the Axis's turn to once again kick our ass. We'll see you when this next time. We'll see what happens to this raggedy ass line.